Welcome, everyone, to episode 109 of Mr. Robin's Hood podcast. I'm Robin Hohweiler, or Mr. Robin to you, and I'm joined, as always, by my plant-loving collaborative partner and BFF, Mikel Mauree Robinson, known throughout the podcasting uni as Mikey on the mic.
Who was, this morning, out there taking care and tending to her plants and talking to them, because they do have their own little plant brains. Carry on.
No. Wait a minute. Yeah, no, that's cool. Oh, okay. Never mind. Just one. Oh, now I know why I did that. Never mind. Okay. So we'll pick this up here. In this episode, we'll be deep diving into the science behind the idea that astrocytes may play a bigger role than neurons when it comes to cognition, emotions, and behavior. Before we get started today, I'd like to congratulate Mikey on making yet another groundbreaking scientific discovery. Not in a laboratory, nor through years of research. No, Mikey achieved this by staring into space for about 15 minutes. See, most people think the brain is run by neurons. Mikey disagrees.
I have always disagreed.
She says the brain is actually run by the little helper blobs. That's the scientific term for astrocytes, according to Mikey.
I'm feeling very magic school bus shit right now, you know?
Let
me go into the mind of you in my little school bus, but I gotta drive it through your asshole first.
I get to your brain.
To get to your brain?
No.
Okay.
No, really, you'd like go through their nose or something, but I think it'd be more fun.
To go through your ass?
Rectal entrance.
Oh boy, we're off to a grand start here. She recently learned about astrocytes, the star-shaped cells in the brain that scientists once believed were just support staff for neurons. Apparently, they do much more than that.
And sometimes I wonder, not to cut you off again, but I'm good at that.
No.
How was it taking this long for them to figure this crap out? I mean, it's 2026, people. Like, why are we just now deciding there's more to neurons?
Get with the program.
Yeah, come on. I've known plants had brains for years. God.
Naturally, Mikey took this information and immediately concluded that astrocytes are middle management. She says neurons are just loud employees sending emails all day, while the astrocytes are the ones quietly keeping the whole operation from collapsing.
This is such a great analogy, Mr. Robin. Like, heck.
They're basically brain HR, she explained. If a neuron starts acting up, Karen the astrocyte schedules a meeting.
Karen.
Why
isn't it Lisa? Listen, Lisa.
Last week,
gonna be a Karen.
Last week, I asked Mikey what she thought while she was staring out the window for 15 minutes. She said, "I wasn't thinking. My astrocytes had the floor." And now she blames every questionable decision she's ever made on cellular office politics.
Exactly.
That wasn't me buying a 7-foot skeleton in July. My astrocytes signed off on it. Apparently, they've also approved adopting another cat, buying 3 more houseplants.
I've been trying to do that. Adopt another cat. And Brett's just shoot me down. I was like, it's a white one. It's an orange one.
And ordering a waffle maker because, and I quote, my brain wanted options.
Waffle options.
She's become convinced that whenever she forgets why she walked into her room, it's because the astrocytes are reorganizing the filing system. If she loses her keys, they're buffering. If she forgets your birthday, temporary glial outage. If she accidentally buys 12 bags of potato chips at the grocery store,
they were on sale.
It's an executive decision made by the astrocytes.
They were on sale.
Honestly, it's the most convincing excuse she's ever come up with. But as we'll learn today, over the past couple of decades, that story has changed dramatically. Scientists are discovering that astrocytes help regulate communication between neurons, influence learning and memory, shape our sleep, and may even play a central role in consciousness itself.
Dun, dun, dun.
In other words, the brain may have had an entire management team hiding in plain sight all along.
Okay, my management team sucks.
which raises an uncomfortable question. If the astrocytes...
Can I fire them?
No. If the astrocytes... no. If the astrocytes have been quietly running the show this whole time, have any of us actually been in charge?
Now I'm going to have nightmares.
Or have
Love
we
the astrocytes.
or have we all just been unpaid interns working for star-shaped cells with excellent organizational skills? Let's find out.
I'm excited to find out more about this.
Joining us today is our friend and frequent guest on this podcast, Ingrid Wickelgren. Ingrid is a freelance science journalist based in New Jersey with more than 30 years of experience writing and editing about the mind, brain, and all things biology and medicine. She specializes in long-form journalism and enjoys working on news, trends, profiles, and short features. Her work has appeared in Science, Health, Business Week, the New York Times, Science News, Scientific American Mind, Popular Science, IEEE Spectrum, Discover, and Spectrum. She also penned more than 85 science stories for Current Science, a magazine for middle school students. She has been a guest on the History Channel, MSNBC's Dylan Ratigan's show, and NY1. She has interviewed Ray Kurzweil and the astrophysicist Caleb Scharf on C-SPAN's Book TV. She has an IMDb credit for William Shatner's Weird or What, and she's been featured in NPR's On Point and New Hampshire Public Radio, among other programs. She has also written scripts for and appeared in several Scientific American videos. When she is not writing, editing, or narrating stories of strange happenings, sounds right up our alley.
Right.
She enjoys running, hiking, and catching up with the adventures of her two grown children. Ingrid, welcome back to the podcast. The topic today comes from an article you wrote for Quanta magazine earlier this year, titled "Once Thought to Support Neurons, Astrocytes Turn Out to Be in Charge."
Thanks for having me.
So, we read through the article, and it was, as everything you do, it was well written and easy for even lay people like myself and Mikey to really understand. So essentially, over all time, going back for more, as you point out, for more than a century, neuroscience has treated neurons as the brain's primary information processors. And the astrocytes, which are star-shaped cells, were viewed largely as support cells that nourished the neurons and maintained the brain's chemical environment. Your article argues that this view is undergoing a fundamental shift.
Yeah.
So
it is. Is that the question, or
no? Here comes the question. So, for most of people listening to this, they've heard of neurons, but not the astrocytes. What exactly are the astrocytes?
So astrocytes are a type of glial cell. There are actually three types. Well, maybe more than three, but three major types of glial cells. And they are. Glial cells are sort of the non-neuronal cells, in the brain. There's microglia, which are the brain's immune cells. Actually, they have specialized immune cells in the brain. There are also cells called oligodendrocytes, and they primarily form sort of insulation around neurons and help speed neural transmission. So many nerves have this wrapping, and those are the ones that transmit signals the fastest. But the astrocytes had sort of long been viewed, originally they were actually thought to just be sort of the brain's packing material. They sort of are, squished in between neurons just so that things, don't shake around too much, right?
Yeah.
And then later on, scientists realized that they also kind of help preserve the right chemical environment for the neurons. So they buffer different ions and stop up certain kinds of chemicals, and they just kind of help make sure that the environs of the brain are good for neurons. But it was still really a support function for neurons. And there have been hints all along that astrocytes play a role in the actual neurotransmission of the brain, but for most of the past century, scientists really did not consider that to be a viable hypothesis.
I see.
But there is quite a bit of there were some hints even in the last century, but just hints. And then the real evidence started building in the late 1980s with kind of an interesting experiment. And I don't know if you want me to talk about that or if you have another question.
Yeah, actually, I was kind of interested in
Keep going.
What discoveries kind of changed the overall view.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, why has it taken so long to figure this out? So I'm very interested in that piece of it, Ingrid. So
yeah, I mean, I think people just glommed onto neurons, and neurons are extremely interesting, right? And back in the 50s, there was a huge amount of research on exactly how neurons transmit information and what happens at their junctions called the synapse and what molecules are released there and just all the molecular details for that. And people knew these glial cells were there. They'd been discovered anatomically back in the 1800s. But people just had this tunnel vision on neurons, really. And it was interesting, though, because in 1984, there was some research on Einstein's brain. And it turned out they were looking at the differences, between anatomical differences between his brain and just, your average brain. And turned out that the number of neurons was pretty similar, but the number of glial cells was vastly different. The number of astrocytes was much different, and so that was sort of interesting. Wow, it's astrocytes that are playing some kind of role in in intelligence, right? But one of basically the first experiment that showed in modern day that astrocytes are sending signals came in the late 1980s. There was a researcher who had invented a new fluorescent microscope. He was actually Stephen Smith, who was a microscopist. And so they thought, and as with a lot of things in science, sometimes it's the tools that bring about these discoveries. So this guy's graduate student wanted to actually study neurons because nobody cared about astrocytes, right? But they knew that astrocytes were required for these neuronal cultures to survive. So he puts these astrocytes down. But he looks in this microscope, this new, the latest, greatest thing. And what it shows is there's calcium sensors in there because when neurons fire, calcium rushes into the cell. So there's calcium sensors in there. So what you're looking at is calcium through this fluorescent microscope. And he was shocked because what he saw under this microscope were calcium waves being transmitted through the bed of astrocytes. And so he just screamed, boss, come look at this,
Right.
And so that was really the first kind of modern day evidence that astrocytes are sending some kind of signal. And they were sending that signal in response to the application of a neurotransmitter called glutamate. So it was sort of saying, okay, neurons are firing, and then somehow that's triggering this huge wave of signaling through this bed of astrocytes. And nobody really knew what to make of it exactly, but there were, Smith and his colleagues were thinking, this shows some kind of transmission, information transfer, and that maybe this was another mode, kind of a parallel mode of information transfer in the brain. It happens much slower than neurons, so we're not doing the same thing. We're not duplicating effort here. And so it happens kind of over kind of a wider area, and neuronal transmission is really fast and it's point to point. So this became interesting. And it was followed up, but only by a small group of people. Most people ignored it.
Which is interesting to me. My brain's like, why did they ignore it? To me, it's fascinating from this point, but maybe it's because I'm outside looking in. I don't know.
Well, there's so many labs studying neurons, right? And we even have the term neuroscientist that
right.
I always sort of thought of kind of as synonymous with brain scientists, right?
Right.
But really, scientist doesn't apply to glial cells, really, right?
Uh-huh.
So people call themselves glial biologists, which is sort of a funny name, but they're studying this other, important component of the brain. But a lot, researchers are heavily invested in their work, and it's not that neurons aren't important; they're extremely important. But it's sort of like having a circuit diagram missing like a key component,
right?
And so there are a lot of labs studying neurons in isolation, and I think people just weren't ready to take it. Makes things more complicated,
right?
Adding this.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like a whole nother level. Sounds like, as far as the function of the neurons in the brain and their need for these astrocytes.
Yeah, and so one of the things that researchers think astrocytes are doing, and we can go back to the history too, but is that they are having an impact on sort of the overall state of the brain.
Uh-huh.
So when I have a specific thought, maybe that's more neurons, but if I'm sleeping, so my whole brain is kind of toned down, right, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That could be, those brain states could be modulated by astrocytes. Or when it comes to mental illness, right? Depression can be a depressed brain state, right? People are kind of, it's just a different brain state too, right? Mania might be a more hyped up brain state. So these are the things that that researchers believe through a lot of these experiments that I outline in the article. It's sort of becoming evident that astrocytes are performing this kind of function, controlling the brain state. They also are probably perform sort of a maintenance function, which is that the brain has to operate like any, I guess, circuit at kind of a median level. So it can't be too, it can't flatline and erupt in a seizure, right? So
right.
That's kind of a maintenance function as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's, it's interesting because, of course, for many decades, there's been progress in treatments for psychiatric
right.
disorders. There isn't really a anything close to a cure, and there's just so much more to do. And one might imagine that if the researchers took astrocytes into account, there could be some key insights there that could produce potential breakthroughs.
So that could be like a missing component to, improving efforts to improve someone's mental health.
Yeah, because, we don't really understand how most psychiatric medications work.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's some basic chemistry or whatever, but connecting that to directly to, improvement has been elusive.
Right, because usually medication kind of just, it's almost like a Band-Aid. It's just kind of masking the symptom. It's not actually correcting the whatever, the chemical imbalances, as they would call it, in the brain.
Yeah, it's really hard to know because it's really hard to these exactly. And so it's a lot of trial and error when you have, and I do really want to say that I believe that the current psychiatric medications, as a group, right? If you could figure out what exactly to give to each person, which is a whole nother subject.
Yeah. Yes.
But that they are extremely important. So I do not believe that these are that one should disparage them too much. But we clearly have a long way to go.
Right.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. So would you say that it's accurate to say that an astrocyte are in charge? I say that in quotes, kind of, or is that kind of oversimplification of it?
Well, it's a simplification, but I think in charge it means sort of these sort of tuning up and down, right, of the entire brain. On a slower level across time and space, so you can sort of think of them as the Uber control, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But when you look scientifically, of course, that means something a little bit more specific.
Right.
But so for the headline, it was close enough.
There you go.
And to make the point that, hello,
right,
these cells are important.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like you've kind of touched on this a bit, but could you kind of elaborate from your knowledge that you've gained in writing this, that how astrocytes communicate differently from neurons?
Sure. So on one level, they communicate much more slowly and over much broader, over so a longer time scale and also broader area, right? So one app can connect to like a couple million synapses. So they sort of send these sort of branches. It's hard to, ask and be sort of amoeba-like, really, in the actual brain. But they can interact with that many synapses, and a synapse is where two neurons communicate.
Right.
So the astrocytes will communicate at that sort of broader level, and what they do is they do something called neuromodulation. And they're sort of intermediaries. So people thought that neuromodulation is sort of what we were talking about before, sort of adjusting the gain of the brain, how active it is overall or how active a certain area is. And they thought there was this neurotransmitter that was involved in neuromodulation called norepinephrine. And they thought it was only involving that it just acted directly on neurons, but it turns out it acts through the astrocytes. So they knew this neuromodulation existed before, but they did not know that it it was at the function of the astrocyte. So I'll give actually a really cool example of one of the experiments, and I think this is the most relatable experiment of the more recent ones, and that is that they studied this behavior in zebrafish, which is actually a giving up behavior. So it's like when you try something and you try it again, you still can't do it and you still don't have success and you just say, "Oh, forget it. I give up." Right. And it's a state transition, right? And it's sort of like depression, hopelessness is it's sort of like hopelessness, right? Which is part of what a lot of people feel when they're depressed.
Right.
So it's an interesting, and the experiment involved zebrafish swimming. So they stick zebrafish in a sort of a fixed position, and they use virtual reality to make the zebrafish feel like they're swimming. The zebrafish try to swim, but the virtual reality will show whether it's making progress, staying still, or slipping backwards. So it's visual stimulation. That's like a pattern that will pass by them one way or another. So they're able to simulate a situation where the zebrafish is swimming really, really hard, but it feels like it's slipping backwards, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, all this effort for nothing, right? I'm just going back, no matter how hard I swim, this current is just way too much, right? That's the simulation in the lab. And so, they give up. And then they just stop swimming. And then after a little while, they try again. And it turns out that the astrocytes are kind of the way that they are reacting. They're keeping track of the number of trials that this zebrafish is, like how long it's swimming until it gives up. And let me see if I can get this a little bit more detail. But it's just super. It's super interesting. Hold on a second. So they're able, basically these zebrafish are kind of they're transparent, and they're able to look at the astrocytes using these whole brain imaging techniques that they have. And so what they can see is the calcium building up in the astrocytes, and the buildup paralleled the number of attempts that the fish made to fight the current. As if astrocytes were keeping track of this. And if they disabled the astrocytes, the fish would never stop swimming. They just kept going. And if they were stimulated artificially, the fish would stop swimming right away. Yeah. So it showed that the astrocytes were kind of controlling this giving up behavior, which is really interesting. It's a state that you can mimic in this zebrafish, which is, I don't know, it's cool. It's a clever experiment. So
it's kind of like the subconscious, and the astrocytes are kind of like a subconscious little brain in there, keeping track of the information being collected and using it to drive a decision of whether to continue or not. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
I mean, it's an interesting way to look at it, right? I mean, subconscious is a little bit more meta than an individual.
True.
But I can see the parallel, though. It's kind of a cool, thought of how to, conceptualize what astrocytes are doing, because it is sort of a meta thing. I mean, we don't think about. We don't make a decision to give up, really. I mean, I guess we do, but it sort of just happens.
Yeah. It's not like I'm deciding to do this right now. It's just it's something that just is happening. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it.
I mean, and certainly for other things like sleepiness or depression, those aren't decisions. Those are things that just happen,
right,
to us. Most of the time. That's how I look at it, anyway. So.
Yeah, if people chose to be depressed, I would be worried about those people. Yeah, why?
Yeah.
It's a terrible thing to have to live with.
It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah. It is. If by subconscious meaning, this is not something that you really think about, it just happens. That makes sense.
And how, because I recall you had touched on, they were also doing research on fruit flies in addition to the zebrafish and mice. How significant is it that the similar mechanisms were found in across the board in all of those experiments?
Extremely significant. That's a lot of what made a big impact and why these three papers were sort of published together in Science, which is a very prestigious. And the idea that these very different organisms have the same or similar mechanisms through astrocytes are working to modulate neural activity, right? That's where the big kind of the big new take of this paper is to show that astrocytes are doing this special function of neuromodulation, because when you say, oh, astrocytes are involved in information transfer in the brain, the first question is, well, what are they doing? Why does the brain need them, right? If they're doing the exact same thing as neurons, then what's the point? But this is to say, no, they're not, and this is what they're doing. So,
and what do you think that suggests about the evolution of the brain?
About the evolution of the brain?
Well, yeah, I probably didn't.
I mean, if by that you mean that there's a similar way these nervous systems evolved, I mean, that across, the evolutionary tree. Yeah. Then yeah, I think that it looks like the glial cells and specifically astrocytes are performing similar functions across the the animal kingdom. And it's interesting because what they were looking at was a little bit different in different animals. As we talked about, the zebrafish was sort of this giving up behavior. One of the way that they eventually figured out in animals what astrocytes do is that because they were trying to originally, after these initial experiments in these cell cultures, right? The next step is to say, well, what are they actually doing? All we saw in the cell culture was that they were transmitting signals from one to another. And it was really hard at first, because it was like you shine a light. They sometimes responded, sometimes they didn't. You tickled the whiskers in a mouse, and sometimes they responded, sometimes they didn't. And they found that the way to get them to respond consistently was to startle animals, and that's a change in state, right? But that was the first thing that they saw that made astrocytes consistently respond and gave a clue to what they were actually doing in the brain that might be different, and involved this change in brain state. So with the zebrafish, they startle. It's actually a zebrafish larvae. Sorry, fruit fly larvae. And they startle the larvae by turning it upside down, which initiates a whole series of responses to try to right itself, like turn itself right side up. And so that was the initial experiment that indicated that actually showed a lot of the molecular mechanisms, which we don't have to go into, but exactly, in order to convince people that that something, in the brain does something, right? You kind of have to tell them how, right? And in the brain, what that means is a series of molecular interactions. So that was actually first discovered in the fruit fly larvae, and then it's replicated in these other species.
Okay.
So and the interesting thing about that is that this is the very beginning of understanding the pieces, the chain of events that show how the astrocyte, so maybe how neural activity affects the astrocyte, and then how what signals the astrocyte sends to the neurons to either increase their activity or decrease their activity, right, on this sort of micro level. And we're just starting to understand this, and this is something that was worked out for neurons back in the 1950s. So it's 75 years later, we're suddenly starting over with the astrocyte in there. Not starting, we're at the beginning of this process.
Right.
When we realizing this is important in the circuit. In an electrical circuit, it's an electron that moves forward, right? Electricity, but in the brain, it's a lot of chemicals, a lot of chemistry, and a lot of biochemistry. So it's a little more varied.
It's very interesting. My mind's just going all over the place with all these different thoughts about what you're even saying. As far as like, I'm thinking, is there a way to exercise an astrocyte, right? So if like one is not doing its job, which maybe we don't even know how to figure out that one's not doing their job. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many questions. It's so interesting. And I'm sure you probably had the same thought in writing this. Like, it is just the tip of the iceberg on what this could turn into and the importance it proposes in our brain function.
Yeah. So, basically, there's still a huge amount of research done on neurons that doesn't take into account astrocytes.
Right.
It's not still not yet normal that you would study the astrocytes in the circuit. I mean, I heard a talk the other day. When there are these there are all these people do use circuit models, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they know how to model the astrocytes in there yet. But in any case, they don't usually. And it just adds a huge layer of complication when they do these more computational models, right? There's a lot of computational neuroscience. So yeah, it adds a whole nother layer. But yes, if we could figure out their role, especially in these different kinds of conditions and illnesses, more precisely, exactly, if, as you say, an astrocyte isn't doing its job, how do we adjust its function, right? And just like with neurons, we'd probably be using some kind of biochemistry. Or, I mean, that's with medication, but there are other treatments like, that people use electrical type of stimulation treatments. There's a variety of those now available. So it could be something like that as well, I suppose. But the different ways you would if you learn more about what's wrong, then you might be able to figure out how to correct it.
And yeah, and then it comes down to, is this tied to genetics, right? Are you predestined to have a certain type of neuron, astrocyte, brain function because of your DNA? I mean, that's a whole nother question too that I think about.
Like every all of that has a genetic component, or possibly an epigenetic component. But there's trying to figure that out is another level. I mean, if you had maybe, people have discovered people with very specific genetic conditions that affect the function of the brain in very specific ways, and those are usually more. It's possible to tease those out, right? If people with genetic disorders that are involved, like a single gene, can kind of trace that. But most people don't have that. But nonetheless, there's probably groups of genes that are working together, and that's another. It's another way to investigate things as well, but harder when there are genes involved.
Right, and I feel like those things may come with time, as it's taken 75 years to get to this point, and it's just the tip of the iceberg, and having to learn exactly the function that they have before you can take it that far. But a question that kind of leads me is, how might this research, in your opinion, change our understanding of the psychiatric or the disorders that people are dealing with and have been for years?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people consider these as neuropsychiatric conditions, right? That's the term. I mean, they're not. There's another category of disorders which are neurological, which is a little bit different,
right?
And that's also relevant, but maybe a separate discussion. And the current medications are usually discussed, or how they work in terms of how they change what's going on at the synapse. Is the junction between two neurons, and there really aren't any that target an astrocyte. And the whole idea that these conditions are, I don't know, maybe we should call them, glial psychiatric conditions.
Right.
If the glial cell or the astrocyte is, the primary lever in mood and brain state, it seems like they might be even more relevant to what's happening in these conditions than the neuron. But of course, it's all brain circuitry that works together. Everything is involved. So, but I don't know. When you say, well, SSRI, that's usually talking about serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor.
Right.
That's the reuptake of serotonin, so that there's more hanging around in the synapse. But I never hear anything about glial cells in that, and I don't know. What are these medications doing to the astrocyte too? Like, that's
good question. That's a very good question. Because that was my thought too. Like, because when you say that they're all working together, and in whatever respective ways that they do, but it takes all of them to get to the state you're at or whatever. How are they affected by these biochemical medications, or the things that you're taking? And that's just like, I mean, there is like 15 cans of worms here that we could just crack open all separately. You know what I mean? It's so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting too, though, to think that these cells have this role. That the astrocytes have this role that seems quite relevant to a lot of things that we experience as humans.
And do you think and this is maybe more than we want to take on here. But I mean, is it the money behind the research that has kind of inhibited because as I'm sitting listening to you and I read the article, it strikes me that astrocytes are kind of the poor stepchild of neuroscience.
Yeah, I mean, right. I think what happens is that the money that goes into these research projects is decided upon through government grants in large part. I mean, not all, but that's kind of one of the main, sources. And there are committees of scientists that decide whether to fund these grants or not. So the groupthink may or may not, you have to kind of convince the masses, kind of that's kind of the wrong word, but sort of the overall feel that this is important, right? So that's why some of this research is important, because it takes quite a bit of strong data to make it so that to make the whole idea that astrocytes are really critical parts of neural circuitry, and as something, that to convince, I don't know where that sentence started, sorry, to convince people that astrocytes really are critical parts of neural circuitry. And one of the and then as people become more convinced of that, right, it just takes more data to overcome, and people who are entrenched in the neural, the solely neural doctrine of the brain, and once you do that, then you get committees where more people will say, oh, we should fund that because that's important. Right. And I think that this recent research goes a long way, because it provides strong evidence for a specific role for astrocytes, right? The neuromodulation, the state change, and then one step beyond that, how are they doing this? How are they changing the state of the brain? How are they influencing neurons? That they could see the chain of molecules that goes from astrocyte to neuron and neuron to astrocyte, right? How they're interacting on a molecular level. That's something that is important for scientists to be able to see and understand.
Yeah. So in essence, it's almost like having the evidence, the research to prove that this is a worthy thing to throw money at, to go down the rabbit holes to learn more about, because this could be a game changer in that realm of just neuroscience and all the brain stuff in play terms.
Yeah, there have been people all along who have championed this research, right. But it's been, it has been mostly a little bit of a backwater, when really it should be integrated into studies of neurons as well.
Yeah, and the conspiracy theorist in me is like, they don't want us to know what astrocytes do, which I'm sure isn't true, but that's just where I go. I've seen like a meme of an amoeba looking thing saying, they don't want you to know, kind of.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, people do get involved in their lines of research, and people are resistant to change, right?
That's very true.
They don't want to change their research to take on an additional complication, and maybe they also aren't familiar with the techniques that you need, or the microscopes that you need, or whatever. I don't know all that's involved, but you have to take a new element into consideration, and oftentimes you need different kinds of expertise or equipment, and then you have, your lab has to change.
It's a huge shift, I suppose.
Yeah, almost the culture within has to evolve to the point where it's accepted to make those changes to follow that research path down another line. Because I mean, if you spent 20 years on something and you feel like you're going to hit a breakthrough, you don't want to switch gears on something else. In essence, they are interconnected, being in the brain function, but
Right. I mean, some of these labs have adapted, right? They were looking at neural circuitry, and then some people came to their lab and started looking at the glial cells. So the astrocytes. When I say glial, I keep defaulting to the category of cell. Astrocytes are, mind our listeners, are one of the types of glial cells, and are the focus of the article that I wrote for Quanta.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously, this is a lot of this research seems to suggest that existing models of brain and how it functions is a little bit incomplete. And I'm wondering how. And here's one that's way out for you. How do you think that these changes or the newer research and understanding would affect artificial intelligence research, which, unless I'm terribly mistaken, is largely modeled on neurons?
Okay, well, so let me just preface this by saying AI is not my area of expertise. But my understanding is that a lot of the newer, like, large language models aren't really modeled after neurons per se. There is AI research that is modeled after neural network research.
Yeah.
And I don't think, but again, this is not my area of expertise, but I think of that as being separate from some of this newer AI stuff that people are all, worrying is going to replace jobs and things like that. But potentially those are connected somehow. But yes, the neural network models are just layers of neurons, and feedback loop models and things like that. The ones and those, right, they don't, as far as I know, do not have any astrocytes in them. They're pretty abstract. So what you would need is an abstraction of what these to put in what these astrocytes do, right? The neural
and then
modulate.
Try to model on that, maybe.
But yeah, you could cut this from your thing. I'm really not an expert here.
We threw the spitball at you. You handled it well.
I'm feeling a little like, I'm not sure about, how much, I know a little, but not a lot. I've never really thought about the intersection of neural networks and models and what most people are talking about with these, large language models like Claude and things.
Right. Yeah. What would you say are the biggest unanswered questions about astrocytes?
Well, one of the biggest ones is exactly how, there's still a lot of unanswered questions about exactly how they are integrated into these circuits. So we know some of the models involved, and in terms of, so neurons are sending signals to astrocytes, and then astrocytes are then down the line are influencing the neural circuitry to either increase or decrease the response of the neuron. And still there's a lot of that chain there's only pieces of those that are being discovered. Those are important, but there's still a lot more to be discovered. It'll also be really, as we said before, it'll be really interesting to try to study these in the context of various kinds of disorders and conditions. there is an interesting there is some data already in mice that astrocytes are involved in a mouse model of depression, and also the administration of ketamine, which is sort of a newer potential psychiatric treatment, can reduce this sort of giving up behavior, and so that indicates that astrocytes may be involved. And I think studying these in the context of these conditions and treatments is something else that remains to be, there's just a lot of unanswered questions there.
Oh, absolutely.
Well. And I, there's probably many others, and I think you probably touched upon some of them, as well.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of exactly how this is working, and the number of different mood states and psychiatric states or whatever that they might be involved in, and to what extent. Yeah, it's
yeah, because in kind of looking at like the things that were highlighted in your article, the researchers believe astrocytes may play important roles in depression, anxiety, the sleep regulation, as you said, hunger and motivation, learning and neuroplasticity, and then other neurological disorders. And one of those, when I hear depression and anxiety, the next thing I think about is intrusive thoughts. And I'm like, curious about, obviously we don't know where those thoughts come from. But it'd be interesting to see if they would play a role in those too, because I feel like they kind of go hand in hand with the other disorders. Some of them, as far as like the depression and anxiety, and a lot of times people that experience those are also experiencing those intrusive thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, you could imagine that an astrocyte could increase the responsiveness of certain of the neuronal circuits that underlie those kinds of thoughts.
Mm-hmm. So, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you another question. The experiments. What kind of experiments would you most like to see conducted next? Have you thought about that in researching this and kind of seeing what they've done? Do you have ideas on what you think would be good as far as experiments for them to try out?
Well, I'm really a writer. I'm not really a researcher, so I'm really in the lab, and I rarely think about how these things happen. Like I'll ask people how they found these things, right? But I'm usually not in the position of trying to figure out a clever experiment. So, but I will. One of the things that would be great is if you could actually look at some of look at some of the behaviors in mice. If you could somehow alter astrocyte transmission in mice, and it could alter certain kind of behavior. I think I'm not sure that's been done. And in terms of looking at the neuromodulation, the experiments in mice that were in the research were done in brain slices. So they were able to see, it was interesting because they were able to see that in these circuits that the astrocytes not only were involved in neuromodulation, but that they were essential for it. The chemical had no effect on the circuit unless the astrocyte was there. And so but it was not in a mouse where there was some behavior they were studying. So I don't know exactly what the constraints are, but to my mind, it would be cool to somehow look at mouse behavior in the context of astrocytes ability to modulate activity and to see, like in the zebrafish, there was a behavior there, which was kind of cool.
Mhm.
But the zebrafish are not mice.
Right.
Mice are mammals, so we kind of have gone more closer to humans. So
Yeah.
I'm just totally spitballing. I don't really know.
No, and that's fine. I mean, just from your
work in a lab, yeah. So.
Yeah. But I mean, like for me, and I'm different, and I know this, but as I'm, a writer too, when I'm, doing these kinds of things, man, my mind goes, I like become the scientist. You know what I mean? And so I guess that's kind of where my question was coming from, was almost in a, how would you explain that? Like no, not an out of body experience, but you kind of
put yourself
projecting yourself into that situation, and that's just how my mind works. But I'm also out there, so not everybody does that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I don't know. I think. Yeah. I definitely want to know about the unanswered questions, but I oftentimes stop at the point of exactly what experiment would be next. But it's interesting. It's an interesting question. And yeah, I'm not. I also wrote this a little while ago, so there may be something that I asked that I don't remember. If somebody told me this would be their next experiment, because I might ask that. But I can't. I'm. I think, as I said, I think it would be really interesting to do some kind of behavioral experiment in the mice, and the way to explain that these results were in tissues removed from the brain.
Yeah, and I think that would be really interesting too, because my feeling and just by the conversation is, I think they do play. And this is no research disclaimer. I'm not a researcher either, but just my intuitions, like I feel like these are playing a role in behavior, and the way that the brain processes those things or reacts in certain situations.
I mean, I think that's clear that they definitely are. It's just showing it is sometimes difficult.
Mm-hmm.
They've been able to, in the zebrafish, they were able to disable them and show a change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ask them show a change in behavior. And I think that they, but just showing more of the different brain states, how those might change in animals would be really interesting. Higher higher animals like mice.
Mm-hmm. What in your opinion, what do you think the average person, which is probably most of our audience, should take away from this research? I mean, is there
yeah. I mean, I guess I think people have really thought about the brain as this sort of very complex circuit of these, billions of neurons, right? Exchanging these signals at rapid fire speed. And so, the meta view is that, that's just not all of what the brain is about. That if you're interested in how the brain works, there's this whole nother level, and it may be affecting your mood. It may be related to how you react to certain, if you have a mental illness and you're taking medication, how you react to that medication. And that there's just really interesting layers to how the brain works, and that we're still figuring those out. And I just would hope they would be kind of fascinated by this additional layer that, I think most people haven't really heard of. And although biologists have heard about glia for sure, it's only recently coming to light the extent to which they're involved in this processing and their specific role, and also and also it's only just the beginning in terms of incorporating these into most of this research. So the findings don't necessarily have any direct impact immediately on how you walk about your life and enjoy your day. But for people who are curious about how the brain works, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Young person who wants to help these labs, go into this research and help. I think it's the influx of the younger people that are most likely to be the engine of change in these research labs.
Sure.
Right?
And kind of catapult them further than they've ever been. And I feel like we'll probably be studying the complexity of the brain forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But let's not let our astrocytes shut us down and give up on it, okay?
No.
We're not going to be the zebrafish here.
Okay.
Right.
But I think about that and I'm just like, man, we're just now figuring this out. Can you imagine the depth of what's really going on in there?
Yeah. I mean, maybe the other cells are doing more than we think too. But yeah. And there are other probably roles in neurological conditions that some of these cells play, on a different level. But this article really focuses more on the brain, the more of the information transfer brain state, in sort of line of research.
Sure. Well, it was an interesting article, and this was, as always, really interesting podcast. I do have one more question.
Okay.
And this has absolutely nothing to do with astrocytes, but I am dying to know. You have an IMDb credit for William Shatner's Weird or What? What did you do on William Shatner's show?
Oh my goodness. It was really interesting having you list all of those appearances that I made and the various things. That was quite some bio. It kind of made me crack up, but I didn't want to interrupt. But that was the weirdest thing I've ever done. It was super cool. I was at Scientific American. We had this wonderful, wonderful person who was always connecting me and other people, I think, with these gigs for TV and radio and things like that. And for some reason, they wanted someone they had the script already. It was a segment about a man who, I think he'd been an orthopedic surgeon and kind of a hard rock enthusiast, and he got hit by lightning.
Oh.
And he became a concert pianist. Okay?
Okay, he got hit by lightning and then became a concert pianist. Is that what you said?
Yeah. His brain changed. And it's a whole thing. Okay, I can send you the link if you want. In any case,
please do.
Here's the thing. They had the script already. I had nothing to do with researching this, whatsoever.
Uh-huh.
And just so you know, I am also, I mean, I can talk to you and whatnot, and I'm good at certain things, but an actor, I am not. However, they wanted somebody to narrate this thing. Why chose an editor at Scientific American Mind, which is what it was then, to do this? Don't know.
I think it was. I don't know. I think I have an idea. I'll wait. You finish.
Okay, so what happened was, they brought a crew in, and they videotaped me in these little soundproof rooms they had on the other side of the building where we were, which was where Nature magazine was, because Nature and Scientific American shared a space at that point.
I see.
And I think, but also I don't think they were totally soundproof, because people were supposed to be quiet while we were doing it. It was so weird. And then they would rehearse it. And this wonderful woman that accompanied me she was a young woman, to all these gigs that she had set up. She would stand there because apparently I did much better if she was sitting in the room. I think she was just like my mascot or something. Anyway,
she was your muse.
Yes. And I didn't realize this, although I always thought she was a really nice person. And so they just filmed me like an actor, reciting lines basically until I got it. And they would coach me. And then I didn't meet William Shatner because my parts were dubbed in on the show. And then what they filmed of me was just put together there in the, like, you'd see me narrating, then they would show the footage that they had, and Shatner would introduce it, and maybe he interjected. I can't remember now. I haven't watched it in a little while. But I never met him. His part was done separately. But it was a very unusual experience. And I have to say, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, sure.
But very curious as to why. I just never thought I would spend my workday doing that particular thing. Yeah. But it's always super fun when you get to do something that you never thought you'd be able to do, and you never thought you really could do very well. But I got through it, and I think they coached me. And as I said, my muse would sit there, and I would, I guess, gain confidence when she stood there, which was the funniest thing. Somebody told me when Rachel sat there, you did so much better. And I was like, okay. So then Rachel had to stand there, poor thing.
She brought a certain energy that was calming the nerves that you were experiencing, not being somebody that
I told have known, but someone mentioned it, and I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. She's great. So
she's great. That's funny. Well, I wonder, because I think you have a very fascinating voice. It's very unique. I don't think I've heard anybody. And I was a radio personality, so like at one point my voice was who I was to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe it had something to do with that. They were going for a certain voice in the narration, and they're like, we don't care if she can act, we just want her voice. So that's just my thoughts, maybe.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I was a bit younger too then, so maybe my voice was a little different, and I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they saw. I also don't know if they asked for me or if they just asked for somebody that was there to do it. Because a lot of times what would happen was, and I know this happened for the book TV ones, they would ask the editor-in-chief at the time, and she would be too busy. Oh. And so then Rachel would say, Ingrid, do you want to do this? And I'd be like, sure, and so sometimes they were just asking for someone.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were definitely cases where they were asking for me because it was a story that I had written or edited. And then I knew that was specific to me. But some of these ones that are kind of out of the blue, I don't know if they were in this particular case, I don't know if they were asking for me or whether they were just asking for some editor. But yeah, I mean, I suppose if they asked for me, it might have been something to do with something they saw that I had done previously.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know.
It's hard to tell.
But I just said yes because it sounded like a lot of fun, and it was.
Yeah. It's one of those moments when you think, and I am getting paid for this.
I would love it. I would love it.
Well, I have to say that I had so much fun at that job. I got to do so many interesting things, and some of it was because of this woman, Rachel, but some of it was there was this really wonderful person that worked there at the time that did videos. He was really good at video. That was his job. He was a video person. And so I ended up working with him on a lot of videos, and some of them were just a ton of fun. So it was just the diversity of things that I was able to do beyond just the regular writing and editing I was trained to do was really really, I don't know, it was just a lot of fun.
Yep. So we'll let you, if you have, is there anything you want to talk about, any projects you have coming up or anything you want to promote?
Yeah, actually, I have a story. Am I allowed to say this?
We don't want to get you in trouble.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let's just say I have a feature coming out in Scientific American.
Okay.
That I think I can say generally it's about how stories are represented in the brain.
Oh,
interesting.
And it's not out yet, but it will be fairly soon.
Oh, so that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
And I can tell you and the listeners more about it once it appears.
Yeah, if you want to, just get in touch with us. Let us know when it's out and you're ready to talk. We'd be thrilled to have you back on here.
Great. Yeah. It's a lot of fun to talk to you both, and I hope that some of your listeners will find this expands their world a little bit.
Sure.
And that is, I would say, one of the things Mr. Robin and I set out to do when we started this podcast, and kind of delved into the broad theme of humanities, was we wanted to broaden humanity itself by, bringing this kind of content and talking to, people like yourself and sharing it with anybody who will listen. So thank you very much.
Yeah. I applaud that.
Yeah. All right, Ingrid, thank you so very much for coming on. We sure appreciate it. And we look forward to speaking with you again sometime in the hopefully not too distant future.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Okay. You take care.
Okay. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. We hope you folks conveniently listening at home or in your car enjoyed that.
You better have enjoyed that. We work really hard to bring you enjoyable content.
Yeah. And Ingrid is always...
me, I started laughing. I can't even hold it.
And Ingrid has always been a great guest on this program. And
she writes about stuff that we're interested in.
Yeah.
Which is why we keep like, Ingrid, come back.
Come back, Ingrid.
It's so interesting. I mean, this whole, conversation with her was just enlightening, to say the least.
And we recently learned that some of our listeners really dig it when we do neuroscience stuff.
Yeah,
so
they really love that stuff.
So here we go. If you have any questions for either Mikey or myself about today's episode or any other darn thing, you can email us at mr.robin@mrrobinshood.com or Mikey@mrrobinshood.com. Also, you can find us on Facebook at Mr. Robin's Hood Podcast. As always, you can also reach out to Mikey or me via Podophone at 580-827-1113.
I think all we get is spam.
Pretty much.
Nobody texts.
That's all I ever get. That's all I ever get. Maybe you just want to get something off your chest, or you're feeling some butt pain because of something we said during a podcast.
Maybe it's because I drove my magic school bus. I don't know.
Yeah, give us a call. Unless, of course, you're an astrocyte cell in Mikey's brain telling her to do something crazy.
Yeah.
You'll definitely want to have direct communication with Mikey.
I don't know if that's a good idea, but you might want it. Still.
You can leave a voicemail. Text us if you have a question, concern, complaint, compliment, suggestion, whatever. Just don't be a futuristic dick about it. Futuristic? I must have dug that up from some other place. Yeah.
I wonder what that's like.
Okay, so in the meantime, tell all your friends to listen to this podcast as though their lives depend upon it. As always, you can stream or download episodes of Mr. Robin's Hood Podcast wherever you usually find that sort of crap. We're on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, the Podbean app, Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Listen Notes, and Podchaser.
And Mr. Robin forgot to silence his devices.
Oops.
Silence his devices. I can't even talk.
You can also stream them directly from our Podbean website at right up above our heads, MrRobinsHoodPodcast.podbean.com for free.
It's free.
So we'll close now by reminding everyone, as we always do, to stay hungry, stay foolish, and most importantly, stay weird.
Bye.